David in Washington, you're live with Eric and V. What would you like to talk about?
Awesome. I've been kind of wanting to talk about, signs and miracles.
Ooh.
Okay.
Kind of like personal revelation, I guess. Because me personally, I do believe in a God. I don't necessarily say it's a Christian God or whatever, but I do think that you can't prove the Bible to be 100% factual, even if you understood, even if Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, or what you guys talked about, the Old Testament, you can't prove, even if you knew who wrote the Bible, you can't prove that it is true, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, there are a lot of unfalsifiable claims being made in it, so I would agree with you. I don't think necessarily we're asking anyone to prove 100% of the Bible is true. I'd take like the 15-20% that is tied into the whole God concept as being true. If you can prove that, I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious what you have to say about this personal revelation.
Yeah, so about a month ago, I was in Orlando with a buddy, and we were on a car garage, parking car garage. Mm-hmm. And he's really spiritual. He's Christian, but he was like, I've been praying to God, and I've been wanting God to show me more signs, because he says, why would you believe the Bible for its words if it has no spiritual, thing behind it? That makes no sense.
That's dangerous of him.
Like,
thou shalt not test the Lord thy God. Yeah. That's ballsy.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you could debate on, that's true. So out of nowhere, a cross appeared in the sky. And it was like super surreal. And I was like, this is crazy, because I've never experienced anything like that. And I've never seen
a cross appeared in the sky?
Yeah.
Interesting. Can you describe it? Was it the clouds? Was it like a thing of was it?
Well, kind of. It was like an imprint of a. Right. It was like an it was dark all around, so it was like a dark day. There's Wells Fargo, a bank right there. There's like a skyscraper kind of, and no joke, there's an imprint of a cross, like it's clear as day. And I was like, this is crazy, like no way. So I was just wondering, obviously that isn't evidence, even though we have a picture of the cross because we took a picture of it. I don't know if you guys would see that. Hey,
we have an email. Definitely send that picture. I would be very interested to see what that looked like.
Yeah, because for me and stuff, I would say I'm a skeptic. I don't just because the Bible, like the last guy, he said just because Genesis 1:1 says that. I mean, just because there might be a truth claim in one book, but does that mean that whole book's true? Absolutely not.
Right.
And even if you find false things in the Bible, like you guys talked about the wall of Jericho and Joshua and stuff, I found that interesting that you have to take that and you have to study it more, right? I'm not just going to take your guys' words. I would actually like to study it, and I hope that guy does too. So I guess my main thing is it's like with personal revelation, you could say like Joseph Smith, right? He saw an angel, or Moroni, or Muhammad saw the angel Gabriel, and you could say Paul saw Jesus. Those are all three. Those are big claims, that started a huge religion and a huge following. Whether that is true, that they had some type of spiritual experience, you can't prove that. So I guess there's no way to, like, I've been watching you guys for a while, but I don't think there's any way that you could show strong evidence for the Bible unless there is signs or these crazy abnormal miracles.
Well, here's my thought here, David. First of all, like, absolutely. If you want to mail at talkheathen.com with that picture, I am very curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, to the larger point, we had a caller call in, I want to say beginning of last year, during the, like, when we first shut down everything. And they said that they had a vision of the god Bast from Egyptian mythology. And they became a Reformed Church of Reformed. I do not remember what the name of their religion was. I apologize.
I think Reformed Egyptian is Mormon.
But they converted to a religion based on a vision of a cat god, right? And
Right.
so we're like, all right, well, that sounds like a trippy experience. And we're not doubting the fact that you had the experience. David, I believe you when you say that that is something that you saw. My concern here is that you used three really good examples that all led to different religions, right? And anybody following one of those is at the risk of incurring the wrath of the other ones. So if everybody in the world had exactly the same vision or personal revelation and it all led everybody to the same conclusion, that would actually be pretty darn good evidence. But the fact that so many people have so many different visions of so many disparate gods that lead them to different religions and worldviews is part of the problem with personal revelation, because it's not only unfalsifiable in terms of like what actually happened. A lot of it is just contradictory, and there is not a replication process that happens. So those are the two things that kind of don't sit right with me when people bring personal revelation or visions or miracles to the table.
Yeah. I was with I guess Paul in the Bible, when he said that Jesus came to him, because I think that the Bible was written, it was written before the Quran and before Mormonism. And just because something's written, it doesn't mean that's true other than the other ones. But it was written before those two, right? The Bible.
So Mormonism was much, much later.
Yeah.
And Quran was later as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So when Paul wrote that, I think in Galatians 1:8, right, he says like, but even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a different gospel than we preach to you, let them be under God's curse. And you mentioned that it's she talk versus he talk. It's like, just because Paul says, if an angel comes to you, right? So Paul didn't see an angel; he saw Jesus. That's what he claims, right? Not saying that's true, but these other two religions saw an angel, Moroni and Gabriel, which is, to me, that's a little interesting. That they didn't have, I guess, a divine being in that sense of a god, not just an angel.
That's interesting, because I believe that in the versions of the Bible that I've read, it's messenger and not angel specifically. And a lot of where I kind of drew that from is, okay, well, Paul, it's a little bit sus, just a tad sus, when someone goes, oh, by the way, someone else is going to show up and they're going to say something different, but don't believe them, they're lying. Like, okay, you can say that. I can say that about anything. That doesn't necessarily prove that I'm right about a thing, right?
No, and I agree that too. I'm just saying that a lot of I see that with a lot of theists, like the guy that called. I watch your guys' show a lot, but I see these like bad. They're horrible claims. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to defend something, even if this is my position. Even if we knew who wrote the Gospels, which we don't, but even if we did, and even if they did that, we can't claim, or we can't even have, I guess, strong evidence to prove that there's a spiritual world, because you'd have to be there in that day to see something happen. Like, if I saw a staff turn into a snake, like it says in Exodus, or if I saw Jesus walk on water, that's pretty darn good. You could say, trippy.
But I've also seen David Blaine do it.
Right. David Blaine do it. And I would say, like, there is obviously sleight of hand even in those days. It was running wild and stuff. So easily they could have been deceived. But what would you say to, like, I'm gonna send the picture to the email, because it's insane. Like, I think you guys would be surprised. I'm not saying that that's going to change your guys' thoughts at all. But that's the reason
we've been asking for photo evidence. Like, if you've got photo evidence, that is awesome. Send it our way.
And may I ask, are you aware of the phenomenon called pareidolia?
I have not. No.
Okay. So it is an amazing thing to look into, and I'd really love for you to look into it. We as humans are pattern-seeking machines. It is what we do. Evolutionarily, the example that's brought up is, being in a tribe in the savannah around the fire at night, and you think you see a lion and you run, right? And it turns out not to be a lion. Okay, fine. But if it turned out to be, you were the one who survived to pass on your genes. We find patterns all over the place. It's why we see faces in tree trunks, and we see, different shapes and bunnies and clouds. It's just something that we do. We look for, our brains try and create patterns and images that are recognizable, especially when it comes to things that are forefront in our mind. You're going to see crosses all over the place because two things intersecting is pretty darn common. It's just, it's what we as humans do. And so while, again, I'm right there with V, sure, you could experience that. That's absolutely fine. But I don't think that it would necessarily rise to the level of being any more than pareidolia. And I think that if there was a God that wanted us to know about him, it would take that God would do something a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
And so I think that you should raise your standards so that you should demand better than that, because that pareidolia, it is very easily and reasonably explained naturalistically.
Yeah. So with that and stuff, I think before I go, I'll be quick, but I just want to ask both of you, what is the best, I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this, but what, in your opinion, is the best evidence that you've ever come to about a theistic God, or a God being? Just real quick from both of you. I just want to know. I don't think it's ever been really asked.
Yeah, this is always an interesting question to get. We have been asked a couple times. My answer, honestly, is that it depends on what you mean by best, because for me, there are arguments that I enjoy the most and have made been the most head scratching. I had to sit down and talk about it for a couple hours. But at the end of the day, they still didn't lead me anywhere. And in fact, it became very clear that a lot of it was hinged on, fallacy. So two that I really enjoy talking about are modal ontology and also reformed epistemology. Those two are my favorites. I would spend all day talking about both of them if I could. Neither of them are convincing, but I props for effort. Those two go a long way.
Yeah, for me particularly, modal ontology. If somebody wants to talk about that, oh God, that's another one that I am just super, super ready. If you believe and want to talk about modal ontology, not you specifically, David, but for people who are watching, we want to talk to you.
What is modal on? I've never heard of that ever in my life, but can you explain real quick just what that is? A little brief summary.
So we've got a bunch of calls. Really quickly, it's kind of working backwards. So when you talk about ontology, it's different from epistemology. We're talking about what is, and it's kind of working backwards from there. The logic that you're using specifically with modal ontology is necessary and
contingent. Possible,
and necessary.
So there is a whole section of logic called modal logic, and it deals with set, and it deals with existence, and it deals with determining what things are and what things have to be and what things only sometimes have to be and what things cannot be. And so it can be applied to anything. It's not just about God claims. There are some people who try to take Anselm's original ontological argument and revamp it to
William Lane
Plantinga, actually.
Kalam? No, Plantinga, you're right.
But
God, you're good.
But it's essentially a big circle, right? So it starts with the idea that God is necessary, and then it leads you through this circle of logical sounding premises back to the conclusion that God is necessary. So when you break it down, it's just a circular argument, but it takes you on a journey for sure.
And it's fun.
So I would definitely look that up. I would look into Scott Clifton's breakdown of the modal ontological argument specifically. He nails it.
Yeah, and for me, I think that what would be most convincing would be if somebody either propped up a watered down kind of God, if you believed in a pantheon that didn't care about us and didn't interact with us and it was just unfalsifiable, then we could
start by eliminating the logical impossibilities, and then maybe we can talk.
Yeah, but other than that, until I find something that is relatively convincing, and I promise you, and I think I can say this for V as well, we promise you, if we come across something that we feel is convincing, we will tell you, and we will wrestle with it and talk about it and deal with it. And if it is convincing, we will change our views because we want to be convinced for good reasons. That said, David, we need to.
I like
I'm
that.
sorry.
I said I like that honesty. You know.
I appreciate it, and that's all we ask is the same from the people who call in.
Yep.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks for calling in, David.
All right,
Send
guys.
us that email.